Welcome to the 9th and last chapter of this module of the Adquio web interface. This time, we are going to talk about the system menu. To do this, we are going to see it in 10 points. General, Device Server, Network, Wi-Fi AP, MQTT Broker, Expansions, Storage, Cloud, Backup and Restore, Reboot and Power Off. Let's do it. As always, we start with the main Adquio screen, and to get to the system, we are going to open the menu, and we have it below. The first option is General. In it, Adquio shows us values of its internal functioning. It is possible that, at some point the Adquio support department will ask us for this version to give us support. In this way, you will know what functionalities that version of Adquio currently has, consulting the update history. Well, it informs us of what type of Adquio it is. At this time, it can be Adquio Pro, Adquio Lite, and Adquio Mini, as you already know. The serial number, the time zone and the activity time, how long this Adquio has been on without interruptions. The Watchdog is a security system that all the Adquios carry, which allows you to get out of situations in which you have hung up. In this case, it is a test Adquio, and we have forced those crashes to verify that the Watchdog worked. Normally, here you will see 0 times. Package information, simply in which versions we have each of the packages. Also in this information, it could be requested by support. Module information. Each of the modules that all the Adquios have installed, exactly what version are they in, right? Nothing else. Device Server. As we have seen in previous chapters, it is possible to install several Adquios and connect them to each other so that they work as one. This option permits you to configure connections between two Adquios. You can enable and disable this option, and you need to specify a user and a password to permit this Adquio's interconnection. We go with the network option then. First of all, I want to tell you that we are very careful when we make changes here, because we are going to be connected to an IP, and we arrive at this IP, because this IP has been given to us by a DHCP server. If we here change the IP address, and save these changes, we will automatically lose the connection with the device. Why? Because we are connected to that IP. So, once the changes are applied, we must remember that IP we have put here, and change it in our browser, right? So, be very careful with this option. Very well, in network, we have essentially 2 options, although you see that there are 4. First, disable the interface. We will not do it, because we will lose the connection with this Adquio, and we will no longer be able to access it. Put a fixed IP. Put an IP that a DHCP gives us, or leave them unconfigured. Here, it could be as it comes from the factory, but in this case, we have it in DHCP. If we have it in DHCP, Adquio will request a network server to provide it with an IP address, a gateway, and some DNS servers. So, in this case, this IP address, this gateway, and these DNS servers have been provided by this DHCP server. Good. This would be the simplest and automatic way in which Adquio could get an internet connection, but it is possible that in some facilities, the administrator of the computer systems will provide us with static IPs. So, in that case, we would set them by selecting this option, Fixed IP. Very good. We would indicate the IP, and be very careful, because here, if you are not computer scientists, you will see that there is something a little strange, and that is that we have 10.205.11.217. This is a way of indicating the mask of your network. It is possible if a computer scientist has passed us the network information, the network configuration, he has not given us a 24, but has given us a mask of the type 2.55.2.55.00 or 2.55.2.55 and so on. To make the conversion between that format and this one, here we have a tool that tells us, or that allows us to put the value as the computer gives us, and in the end, this 24 is nothing more than taking these blocks of 255, 255, 255, 255, and put an 8 to each one, that has a 255, 8 plus 8 equals 16 plus 8 equals 24 0 according to that 24 comes out of here. Very well, then just let us know that, if the computer scientist gives us the IP address, in this format, we write it, directly, and if he gives it to us with his network mask in this format, we will click on the key to write it, and when we exit Adquio we convert it. The gateway is where we are going to go to the internet, and it must also provide it to us. And, if we are in manual mode, they must also provide us with at least one DNS server, although, it is always advisable to put 2 or 3. In this case, the DNS servers are the ones that make us the name resolution, which convert us domains of the type adquio.com to their corresponding IP address to be able to connect to them. It is essential for all aspects in which Adquio works. In this case, we have 3 for safety. We would have the first one, which is the DNS server of the internal network. We know that this is so because its range corresponds to our network range, and corresponds in this case also to the gateway. It is usually the usual thing for companies to have an internal DNS, so that they do not have to do all the queries to the internet, and especially if they have domains internally in the company. So, this is usually the usual thing that there is an internal DNS, and older as a backup, we have 2 external DNS that are public, right? This is always a recommended technique, and you can even use these same DNS, because they are the fastest and most used in the world. Very well, we are going to leave it as we had it in DHCP, so as not to spoil our connection, and we are going to the next option. At the top, it tells us in a small text how this option works. Adquio has an access point integrated into an AP, but it only uses it when it does not have internet connectivity via cable. What does this mean? If Adquio already has a cable connected to its one door, and it has internet connectivity, the access point is deactivated. Why? Because we can already access that Adquio via the internet, via its usual channel, which would be how we would do it from home, or from the office, right? So, here we can decide if we want that behavior to be like this, or that the access point does not start at any time. If we have it activated as in this case Adquio, when you start up, and you don't see an internet connection, or you don't see a cable connected to your one door, it will activate the Wi-Fi access point, and here, it tells us what the IP address is, what should we use to connect to that Adquio, through that Wi-Fi access point, and is it activated, right? As you can see, the SSID of this Adquio corresponds to Adquio plus its serial number, right? This broker MQTT option is a new protocol that we did not have at Adquio when we started recording this course. Simply this, it is so that you can see that Adquio is constantly improving and constantly evolving. In a couple of weeks, when we start recording this course, the MQTT protocol will be incorporated, right? From now on it will already be compatible with this protocol, and will be able to interact with devices that support it. We are not going to see it here, because we would also have to see its module part, and its device part. We will do it in a separate video. In this option, we will see all the devices that Adquio has connected. The most important thing about this option is that it allows us to connect new hot expansions, that is, without turning off the equipment. In this case, we are going to see an example of what happens if we connect an expansion to this Adquio. As you can see, Adquio has detected the new expansion, and provides us with a button to adopt it. If we press it, Adquio will automatically configure it, in modules and devices. Let's press it, and see what happens. It is already finished, and we already have it here. We are going to go to devices, and see if it appears. Then, the device is already here, and is already available to use. We can enter its variables, and as you can see everything is completely online. As you can see, the connection of expansions to Adquio is completely plug and play. Just by pressing a button we have them ready. We then move on to the next option. In this option, Adquio shows us the storage spaces it has and is using. We have 2 different spaces in all the Adquios. On the one hand, we have the internal storage or system storage. This storage will never change, because Adquio does not write data to this storage system. The data you write is minimal, and especially only at the beginning, when we are configuring it, then it is not written to this device so as not to degrade it, and not ends up spoiling, right? So, the only device on which it writes is the external storage device, which in this case, would be this one. We see that it is a 32 GB SanDisk high endurance unit, and we see that this micro SD card is already prepared. So, you have a system event space, and you have a general storage space. Let's see what happens if we put a new micro SD card in this Adquio. And with the magic of editing, we already have the micro SD card inserted. Let's see then, when we have a new micro SD card, what can we do with it? We see that here a menu appears, which we then saw, in which we can format this storage. Let's do it. It tells us that we are going to lose the data. Logically, if it is a card that was already used and had important content, we should not continue. Very well, it will start to format it. It will take a few seconds. And it has finished, and as you can see, it is flooding us with notifications that the storage that was giving an error here is already restored. It took a little longer, because it has put the information it had before from the database here again, and it has put the information we had from system alerts back here. As you can see, absolutely nothing has been lost, although we have changed the micro SD card. Very good. Well, with this we finish the storage part. In this option, we can see the connection data with our cloud platform, Adquio Cloud. At the top, we have the identifier that the platform gives to this Adquio, and that is unique for each device. Below, we can check if the device is correctly connected to the platform, and if it can upload data in real time to it. And at the bottom, we have information for when Adquio acts as a gateway. If we have this option configured, here we will see the data of it. This option is what allows Adquio to act as a gateway, so that you can access your PLCs of other brands from your office, using Adquio as a gateway. We move on to the next option. We are then going to see the backup and restore option. We are going to first click on the backup copy, and as we can see, it gives us a series of options that allows us to identify the Adquio and link to Equus. Equus, we have not talked about it, nor are we going to talk about it in this course, because it is a similar tool to Adquio but superior, right? So, whenever we see Equus, we can consider that we are talking about Adquio Cloud. So, we want to copy the identification of Adquio and its link with Equus. If we want to make a complete backup, we should also check this option. There is one very important thing to keep in mind regarding this point. Each Adquio device has a unique identifier. If we check this option and restore this backup, which we are about to do in another Adquio, we will take the identifier of this Adquio to that other new Adquio. We should only do this if we want to OK this backup for the hypothetical case in which this Adquio is destroyed by some kind of physical weather problem, a fire, etc. Why? Because if not, the most common is that this information, as you can see, is not copied, and this is completely restored, all that information, except the identifier in a new Adquio. In this way, that Adquio is registered again in the Adquio Cloud platform, and all its information continues to upload normally. It would not be necessary to restore the ID. Although, you have the decision of whether you want to do it or not. The network configuration is what we just saw. The configuration of modules and devices. This is also very important, because in some cases, we will spend a lot of time configuring the modules and devices with all their addresses of each variable. So, it is interesting to make a backup of that information. Setting calendars and events, of course, is also important. We have already seen them. Scripts configuration. Here is all the programming that we have done in Adquio. And screens and SCADAs, we will not see it in this course either. We have to back up a password and repeat it. Why do we have to repeat it? Well, to make sure that we have written it and that we have not made a mistake. Very well, you are creating the backup copy, and what is going to happen is that you are going to download it to us. It has remained in the downloads folder. If we wanted to recover this backup in a new Adquio, or in this same one, restore image, and here we see it. We see that we have the same options as in the backup option. We can decide what we want to restore. If we do not want to restore the identifier option, in this case, it is unchecked, because since we have made a backup, obviously we cannot restore something that we have not backed up, but we have all the other options that we had marked. We could only restore the IP address, the network configuration, we could only restore the scripts, the device configuration, etc., etc. We would put the password, and we would give it to save. I am not going to do it, because this Adquio, I tell you, is a test Adquio, and has important data that I do not want to destroy. Well, we have already seen the backup option then. And finally, the restart option, which allows us to restart the system, or turn it off. Restarting the system could be useful in the event that from support, they ask us to restart it, then, so that a change takes effect, especially if it is a change at the system level. It is very strange that this option is necessary since they are based on a GNU Linux system. This option is almost never used, but it is here in case it is needed at some point. And turn off the system, as it is a very interesting option, if we need to remove Adquio from the electrical panel where it is, so that in this way, it turns off in an orderly manner. Even so, you know that here it has an integrated UPS, and although you do not turn it off, we have correctly, if we remove the power, it will not turn off, and it will automatically start an orderly shutdown process. Of agreement is one of its main characteristics. This feature supports it, both Adquio Pro and Adquio Lite, right? Well, then we have finished the part of the course dedicated to the Adquio web interface. We will see you in the next chapter.